Well, hello again, everyone, and welcome to a very special after hours edition of the Jazz's Daily Brunch. The day is over. Those meetings have ended. Those group emails have been responded to. And we're just here to chill. We're here to talk about the 10 albums you need to know for April 2020 and to just relax. Normally I brew some coffee for these daily brunches, but this being 5 o'clock, this being our kind of hangout, I went ahead and poured myself some whiskey. We've got some Glenlivet 15 with a French cask finish. So it's that kind of vibe, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very excited for this special after hours episode. We got to come up with something to call it. Jazz's happy hour, Jazz's cocktail hour. I don't know if you have an idea, leave a suggestion in the comments. But we will be joined, of course, by the one and only Matt McCucci, our online editor, our favorite online editor, Matt McCucci. You got to give it up for Matt. It's like 11 p.m. somewhere where he is in Prague. And not only that, but he had the courage that a lot of us lack to shave his own head. So we'll get to see him in a minute to talk about the 10 albums you need to know for April 2020. But first, I'd just like to go ahead and thank some of this episode's sponsors. They include Concord Jazz, a great jazz label out of the West Coast. They have a new release coming out on April 24th called Ella 100 Live at the Apollo. Of course, the album celebrates the first lady of song, Ella Fitzgerald. It was recorded live at the Apollo in Harlem. It was produced by 8-time Grammy and Emmy Award recipient and former Ella Fitzgerald musician Greg Field. It was hosted by Grammy Award winner Patty Austin and a Tony Award nominated actor and singer David Allen Greer. And it features performances galore from the likes of Andra Day, Ledisi, Liz Wright, Cassandra Wilson, Monica Mancini, and so many more. Again, that will be released April 24th, so at the end of this week. And we're actually going to have Greg on the program on April 27th to talk about the recording. That should be cool. The episode is also brought to you by Blue Sound. This is a great audio technology company. They have this award-winning high-res sound system that lets you play music in any and every room throughout your home. All you got to do is you choose your favorite streaming service, you hook it up to the free Blue OS app for your smartphone, tablet, or desktop computer, and that's it. Getting the kind of crisp and detailed sound that only an audiophile grade system can deliver has never been easier. Some products that Jazz's viewers might enjoy: the Node 2i wireless multi-room high-res streamer and the Pulse Soundbar 2i wireless streaming multi-room sound system. You can learn more about them at bluesound.com or by going to our website. We have a Blue Sound buyer's guide that we put together to showcase their excellent products. All right, we've got a lot of great music to talk about, and to do so, I am very, very excited, folks, to welcome our special guest, Jazz's online editor, Matt McCucci.
Hello, everybody.
Freshly shorn.
Looking a little different since the last time.
Different, but looking sharp and sporting the black turtleneck.
I'm in full quarantine mode. Right?
You're in full quarantine mode.
I've got the turtleneck, which doubles as a mask, too.
That's right. It's a good starving artist beatnik look, man. And very appropriate because this month happens to be National Poetry Month and National Jazz Month. So you're covering both worlds.
I'm covering both worlds. I'm a big fan of poetry as well as jazz. And I actually recorded a video last week for our series Jazzy's Essentials that talks about jazz poetry, but in particular talks about the 1920s jazz poetry, and with a particular focus on Langston Hughes, who's a fascinating figure of that period and just a genius poet. So
absolutely.
Check it out.
And you're wearing the turtleneck again. So
and I was. You have to.
Just for that. Speaking of a great jazz decade, Matt, how about the 1970s? We're talking fusion. We're talking world jazz. As a matter of fact, we dedicated our entire summer 2020 issue, which is coming out in June, to the fusion era. We did this wide-ranging interview with Chick Corea. Yes, there's the cover. Throwback to his Now He Sings, Now He Sobs days. Wide-ranging interview with Chick Corea. We talked to 6 young artists about how the fusion era influenced them and how they're continuing the fusion tradition. We've got Essential Fusion Records. This is coming out June 2020, and it's our summer issue. Matt, get this. If you subscribe right now to Jazz Is, okay, you can receive 3 months of unlimited digital access. So all of the print content that we convert to online, plus videos, podcasts, so on and so forth. 3 months of unlimited access. Plus, we will enroll you to receive a complimentary print issue, that being the June 2020 summer issue. Pretty good deal, no?
Pretty good deal.
You're going to have to sign up, man.
I'm going to have to. Yeah, I'm going to have to. I've been thinking about it a long time, you know.
Well, anyway, like we always say, we are going to get into the 10 albums you need to know for April 2020. This is coming after the eternity that was March 2020. Here we are into April, and there was a lot of fantastic music being put out. We'd like to put out our little disclaimer before every one of these that we do. These are obviously not the best albums. There's no way we could, rank the best albums. There's just so much great music out there. These are just albums that we came across that we thought had a cool concept or kind of cool musical aspect or backstory that we thought you should know about. But we're covering a lot more music on our website, jazzes.com. So feel free to check that out. But Matt, hey, I'm ready. I've got my whiskey.
Oh, wow. I've got my soy sauce. I don't know why I have a
Take a shot, man. I dare you. I was saying I usually drink coffee during brunch, but I gotta unwind, man.
I should have thought of that. I have no alcohol in the house right now. I haven't been out of the house for a while, but I envy you. Okay, have a shot for me at some point.
Oh, I will. Matt, what do you say we get into the 10 albums you need to know for April 2020?
Let's do it to it.
So we're going to follow along on the text feature that we put together on our website. Here it is now. And we're going to kick things off with a exciting new release from Chris McCarthy. It is called Still Time to Quit. It was released on Rope-A-Dope Records on April 3rd. Chris McCarthy is a very fine New York-based pianist. And Matt, what can you tell us about his latest release?
Oh, yeah. I've been listening to this one a lot because I wasn't really familiar with Chris McCarthy. Like you said, he's very in-demand sideman, and this is actually his debut as a leader. And I think on this album, he showcases a real imaginative sort of approach to both composition and improvisation. And the music is very free-minded, complex at times, but never overbearingly so. And there's some really fine moments in it. Like, there's a lot of surprising turns on his own piano playing, but like the musicians in his band are equally as adventurous. And I think, if there's a track that I want to highlight, because I have been listening to this album a lot. So there's a moment actually where there's a solo by Michael Blake on saxophone on the track called Ready, Steady, Here You Go, that it's probably my favorite track in the album. It's a very serpentine solo, and the whole track is very hypnotic and exotic. Hey, that rhymes. Nice. So it's a cool album. Yeah, it's a really cool first debut as a leader.
Totally. You're a poet and you didn't even know it.
Right.
We arranged these albums chronologically by release date, but I'm actually glad we started the list with this one because I feel like we had an accidental theme here, and this one kind of sets the tone. As you play the album, just as you think you kind of understand the vibe of this thing, and there's a lot, I think they really kind of hit their stride with that, kind of spirit jazz Coltrane, a Love Supreme vibe. Just when you think you know what it is, they will totally flip the script on you, and they're into like a gospel jazz vibe or a world jazz vibe. They use a lot of different grooves, and the thing never sits still. Serpentine was a good word. So kudos to Chris for this leader debut, and thanks for setting off this list on such a strong foot. In the podcast version of this little conversation, we are going to listen to a track, but for the video version, we are going to move right along to the next album on our list, that being one of my favorite vocalists of the moment, Mr. Kurt Elling. He is joined here by the pianist Danilo Perez for a new album called Secrets Are the Best Stories, and it was released also on April 3rd, this one on Edition Records. So Matt, what can you tell us about this new release?
Yeah, before we started this video / live stream / recording, whatever it is that we're doing, we always agree that we're not going to go on too long, talking about each individual release because, we can't just go on and on about, we have a time limit. And I was worried about this one because there's so much that I love about this album. Yeah. There's so many layers to it. And I don't think that I've listened to this album a couple of times so far. And I still haven't really, I don't think I've gotten, I love it, but I still don't know whether I got it entirely, because I think this is the type of album that gets better with every time you listen to it. Not because it's challenging necessarily, although it is also challenging, but because there's just so much in it. Kurt Elling, I'm a big fan, and this is his socio-political side that's being showcased in this on this album. Very much influenced by poetry. In fact, he adapts works by great poets like Toni Morrison and Franz Wright, and Francis E.W. Harper, and the music by Danilo Perez is by him, but also there's arrangements of works by Wayne Shorter, and other composers. I can't think of, because there's so much that I would like to say about this album. Pastorius as well as there. So there's a lot going on, and and a lot of great, heavy, challenging themes explored. But at the same time, it's also just a great album to listen to, enjoyable, but challenging as well intellectually. So it's I tried to just to say all I could say, condense all my thoughts about this album, but I think that the best thing to do is just to listen to it.
Absolutely, and I agree. Kurt Elling, as you mentioned, one of my favorite vocalists at the moment, not just for, his lyricism, his articulation, his tone and timbre, but I don't know what it is about Kurt. Maybe it's because he is a student of poetry, maybe because he's a Chicago guy and he just comes from that great tradition of oral storytelling, the Studs Terkel school, maybe because he went to divinity school and he knows the great scripture. But he has such a knack for conveying the narrative behind a lyric, for turning every song into a story, little scenes. They're so vivid, man. He's so great with that, the way he can paint a picture with his voice. This was a really great listen on two levels: the deep one, where you're really soaking in the lyrics, and just to put on and kind of chill out with Kurt and Danilo's playing. So again, in the podcast episode, we are going to spin a track. You get to hear Matt's famous phrase, "Drop the needle on it."
Yeah. Is it pre-recorded?
It's my ringtone, man. It just every time you call, it says "Drop the needle on." Drop the needle.
What a nightmare.
In this video version, we're going to move along to the next album on our list. This one is from an excellent emerging South African pianist named Nduduzo Makhathini. He has got his debut album on Blue Note Records called Modes of Communication, Letters from the Underworld. It, too, was released April 3rd. And this was a highly anticipated release. And Nduduzo has been doing his thing in South Africa for a long time. Here he is making a splash in the United States. Matt, what else can you tell us about Nduduzo's latest as I take a sip from my whiskey?
Again, I must admit that I wasn't too familiar with him either. So, but I was happy that he's released this album now, because I got a chance to really explore it. And the word that really comes to mind when I think of this album now is one: epic. And it's epic in almost every sense of the word. And to be honest, I understand that he's one of South Africa's sort of greatest jazz stars of the moment, like contemporary jazz stars. So, and I can see what the hype is all about, because this album definitely proves that he's got a vision. And I especially love the way in which he just mixes modern jazz elements with like the traditional elements of the rural sort of landscape that he grew up in. So, strongly recommend it. In the article, in the written article that I wrote, I actually felt that I should strongly recommend it, particularly to listeners who are really into like spiritually oriented music, because there's a lot of spirituality in this album. So it's again, epic. 2 thumbs up.
Totally. Yeah. His pedigree, from his home in South Africa, he descends from, spiritual leaders, so on and so forth. And that strain is absolutely in this music. It's such a universal spirit and spirituality. It speaks to everyone. And exactly what you mentioned about this album, it's a mix of the Afrobeat, or more traditional African rhythms, with that kind of Art Blakey Blue Note swing too. And I think that's what Blue Note picked up from Nduduzo's music. So a very cool listen, a very interesting mashup of styles. Podcast version, let's go ahead and take a spin. Video version, we are going to move on to the next album on our list. And I love this one. It is by Thundercat. Just an all-around cool guy, phenomenal electric bassist, composer in the jazz funk vein. His new album is It Is What It Is, and it was released on Brain Feeder Music on April 3rd. Matt, what's with Thundercat's latest?
I think Thundercat is like a superstar in jazz at the moment. I think he's one of the most famous. Like even if you do, people who wouldn't consider themselves jazz fans, like Thundercat. I mean, that's probably the way that listeners, younger listeners, maybe nowadays actually get into jazz. I presume. But anyways, he has been around for like at least a decade now, which is hard to believe. It's kind of a humble title when you think about it. It is what it is. It's almost like you're saying, "It is what it is." I haven't
Hey,
really looked into why he
could be a
titled it that
motto
way.
for these crazy times.
Including like what we're doing right now.
Yeah,
What's this podcast like? Hey, it is
it
what it
is what
is.
it is.
But no, but yeah. So I mean, this, this, despite that, it's really cool. Sort of a lot of the songs are laid back, kind of a
Yeah.
chill vibe to it. There's funk, but there's also a lot of soul, a lot of
Yep.
electronic experimentation, lots of notable guests too. I think fans of Thundercat are not going to be disappointed. Oh, you know what else I need to point out actually, that perhaps considering what he's released before, this one is a little more raw. It almost feels like you're listening to him a live set. It's sort of
Yeah.
maybe a little difficult to explain, but it does have a more raw edge to it that I've been admiring as I've listened to this album the past few weeks since it was released.
Totally. And all the staples of a great Thundercat album are there with the bass pyrotechnics. He's just lightning quick on the bass, that kind of sultry falsetto voice, that smooth, mellow R&B groove. And what's so cool is Thundercat is really a disciple of that kind of music. It was so cool to see him have Michael McDonald, Kenny Loggins on the previous album. He really understands that music, but he filters it through his own he's an eccentric dude, he's into anime and, comic books. And so he kind of filters that vibe, that baby, let me get, close to you vibe through his own world. So you get songs like Dragon Ball Do-Rag about, trying to hook up while watching Dragon Ball and reading comics, and hey girl, let me show you my Dragon Ball Z DVD collection. It's great music. He's such an entertaining guy. And this is a wonderful new album from him. So podcast version, let's take a spin. Video version, let's move on to the next album on the list. This one is by the band leader and pianist Arturo O'Farrill and his Afro-Latin Jazz Orchestra. It's called 4 Questions, and it was released April 10th on the Zoho label. So, Matt, this was a cool release. What can you tell us about this one?
Yeah, this album is another one. So with this album, we kind of return to the social political albums of the list. And obviously, Arturo has done a lot of that throughout his career. He has tried to represent themes of like adversity and oppression, and he's been particularly successful. Maybe that's not the right term, but he has also been successful in doing that with his Afro-Latin Jazz Orchestra. The title composition is actually a major one, and it's inspired by W.E.D. Du Bois' 1903 book, The Souls of Black Folk, which is really a well-known sort of a book. And they are expanded upon in the title composition of this album by special guest Dr. Cornel West, who is somewhat of a polarizing figure. I think many will agree, but for sure his presence on the record is really, really powerful. And so, yeah, it's well worth checking it out. I think it's a very powerful moment.
It is. It's some real haunting, orchestral moments, almost symphonic, in the complexity and the harmony, But at the same time, with everything Arturo does, it swings and grooves. So, yeah, a really nice addition to Arturo's discography. For the podcast version, we're going to listen to a track right now. But for the video version, we are going to move on to the next album you should know about for April 2020. This one being a new installment from the saxophonist Wayne Escoffery. It's called The Humble Warrior, and it came out April 10th on Smoke Sessions Records. Featured Randy Brecker on trumpet, David Gilmour on guitar, David Kukoski on keyboards, Ugana Okego on bass, and Ralph Peterson on drums. It's quite an ensemble. Matt, what can you tell us about this one?
Yeah, it is a great ensemble, actually. There's a lot of like experience in there as well when I think about it. So it's definitely cool. So again, I'm going to be honest. I told myself this is the podcast where I'm going to be honest from now on. And obviously, even though we work for jazz, there's just some blind spots. So I must admit that I wasn't too familiar with Wayne either. But like now that I found out, actually, I did know, I realized that I knew about him from the Mingus Dynasty Big Band.
Right.
But now I get a chance to actually listen to him and his work as a leader. and I realized that I really dig it. I mean, I like his Vortex album from 2018, I believe. So this date is really interesting as well. And here he seems to pay tribute to some of his mentors, his teachers, but also some of his contemporaries. And like you said, it's a great quartet that he's put together there. So yeah, it's really an interesting. Oh, Ralph Peterson on drums is amazing.
Totally. And I'm glad you're being honest, and I will too, man. So I'll tell you about that haircut after we get off. What I really think of that haircut.
It's not a haircut; it's a buzz cut.
I'm just kidding. It's beautiful.
I went Joan of Arc.
I love it. And you did it yourself. That's impressive. Yeah, no, I've known Wayne's playing from his time with Tom Harrell, one of my favorite trumpet players. So I've even seen Wayne live a few times. He has a lyricism that blends so well with Tom's playing. And so it's great to kind of see him step out into the leader role here. But like the title suggests, he still keeps that smoothness. He still keeps that suppleness to his lines. He still is not afraid to shine the spotlight on his guests. And there is some really, stellar standout performances, especially by David Gilmour and Randy Brecker on trumpet. So he is the warrior, the jazz warrior, but is that very humble warrior. This is a really swinging set, a lot of cool, unconventional ideas that the band kind of just fits into a groove. I really enjoyed this album. So nice work from Wayne Escoffery. Podcast version. Let's go ahead and drop the needle on a track. Video version, we are going to move right along to the next album on our list. And this was a really great listen, kind of in a different vein. We've done a lot of swing, we've done a lot of straight ahead, we've done a lot of fusion. But this new release from Gregoire Murray and Romain Collin, featuring Bill Frisell, took us in a different direction. It was called Americana, and it will be released on April 24th on the ACT label, ACT. Like I mentioned, kind of a different direction, a country Americana vibe. But what else can you tell us about it, Matt?
Yeah, no, it's really cool. I mean, I just wanted to say the harmonica is an instrument that really doesn't show up on our lists that often. So it's kind of cool to have an album represent this really underrated instrument in the history of jazz, but also of just music right now. We don't hear it a lot. Murray seems to really be like one of the major harmonica players of today, I think, and this album actually aims to represent sort of the American dream. So you really can't not have the harmonica. In my mind, that's sort of like one of the main instrument that comes to mind when I think about the American dream. I don't know why that is, perhaps because I'm not American. but anyways, this is an album that sort of explores various styles of what's traditionally recognized globally as American music, like jazz, like a little bit of country music, a little bit of blues, a lot of influences there. And then you've got Romain Collin too, who is also great. And Bill Frisell, because he's been exploring, in his latest release, similar concept. And he's also got a history of sort of doing this sort of genre blending. So it's nice to have him here. It's really a match made in heaven, this Americana trio.
Totally. I mean, Bill, when you think about his guitar playing, a Telecaster electric guitar playing, he's really kind of the paragon of that, jazz Americana, jazz country vibe. So he's the perfect fit to kind of articulate this vision from Murray and Collin. It's a very visual album, I feel like. I listen to it and all I get that just vistas, I
like Midnight Cowboy, when he's on the bus.
Exactly. Or cruising down a country road, like 8mm film, it's all grainy and the wheat fields. That is totally the vibe of this album. So it's a really cool listen, and it's kind of a departure. If you got a lot of swing in your ears, if you got a lot of funk in your ears, this is kind of a cool departure from all that, and it's just a fantastic album. So podcast, let's go ahead and take a listen. Video version, we'll go ahead and move on to the next album on our list. And if we're talking honesty, so Matt, this was a cat that I didn't really listen much to beforehand. John Carroll Kirby, kind of a piano player, producer, and so he's got a new album out called My Garden on Stone's Throw Records, coming out April 24th. And you turned me on to this one, so what can you say about it?
Yeah, I know. It's hard. He's a mysterious guy.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I mean, that's even I know about his music, and even I've had trouble kind of finding out about it. But I actually have more to say about how mysterious this guy is because he is kind of frustrating in a way, especially when you're trying to put together a list such as this one. But I had heard about this album, and it's really great. The thing, it's like we have to kind of be nice and tidy when we make lists like this. It's we have to pick 10 albums and all of that officially according to our list. The album that we're outlining is My Garden, and this is an entry that it's definitely great. I called it a mind trip because it's got like that dreamlike sort of
Totally.
soundscape, a lot of like electronics, and just also improvisation with the piano, and a lot of cool stuff happening. But at the same time, and that's one of his dimensions, but at the same time, he's also released another album in the meantime earlier this month that's called Conflict. And he just spontaneously decided to release it for free in response to the pandemic and as an antidote to the pandemic. And I think, and it's just a solo sort of minimalist affair. So it's kind of like not entirely different because you can still tell that this is his style, but it does show another side to his creativity. So I would suggest, yes, listening to both albums and and finding out more about Kirby because he's really cool. Although it is difficult to find out a lot about him, I think that this album coming out on Stone's Throw is definitely going to help raise awareness about his music, and I definitely recommend it.
Yeah. I guess he's an elusive figure, but the music he makes is certainly very good. Mellow, ambient, it's kind of thing that loops, and just when you think you're getting lost in it, there's another development that you follow.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of, it's repetitive, yes, but it evolves over time. So kind of a cool listen. It's good to kind of chill out to, but at the same time, it keeps your brain spinning. Podcast version. Let's go ahead and take a listen. Video version. We're going to move along to the 9th album on our list, the penultimate album. Always, whenever I can use that word, I throw it in there.
Penultimate. It's a great word.
This one is another Blue Note release. It is by the singer-songwriter Tom Misch and Yusef Dias. I don't know if it's Dias or Dias. Their new album is What Kind of Music, and it too is coming out April 24th. Again, it's a Blue Note record. So, Matt, this was kind of a cool mashup of artists. What can you tell us about this new album?
I said, I think I wrote in the actual article that it's like it's opposites attract because there is a sense that like these are two artists that have sort of gone down different paths in their careers, although they do share an interest in music, and that's obviously what's essential, especially when you're a creative artist such as these two are. And Mish is more into about the melody and the beauty. Whereas Days, I would say, I don't know. That's a third pronunciation. We have to get him to
take your pick, folks.
Send us a message where he records his name, and we'll apologize because we are illiterate, essentially. Especially me. I don't know what I'm doing, but but he does. But he has been known to have a more wild and experimental side. So together, they actually sort of complement each other's styles, but it's a really cool collaboration. So they actually get into more different territories as well. You got a little gangster rap in there. You got hip hop break beats. So folks, if you get a chance to check out the music video, because we never really talk about stuff like that, but there's a really cool music video for the title track that I suggest you check out as well.
Yeah. Tom Misch is a very talented singer. He has kind of a jazz background, though. He did study jazz guitar, but I'm trying to frame it in a way, that maybe an American understand. It would be like if an Adam Levine, teamed up with a Micaiah McCraven. Like that's the level of contrast we're talking about here, but it totally works. It totally works. Tom's voice over Yusef's beats are just awesome. Like you said, they pull from that hip hop genre pretty heavily. They got appearance by Freddie Gibbs on here, the rapper. Again, this is great mellow out music and an excellent product from two performers that I would have never put together. But kudos to them for joining up, and kudos to Blue Note for putting this album out. Podcast version. Let's go ahead and spin a track. Video version, we're going to move on to the final album on our list. And
wow, I can't believe it.
We sped through this one.
We really did.
But, it's the whiskey, it gets my lips going. No, but
What? I'm
it's
jealous.
a great. We're ending on a bang here.
Yeah.
It's a new tribute to Ella Fitzgerald, of course, called Ella 100 live at the Apollo. It was. It will be released April 24th on the Concord Jazz label. This is a live recording from a night of Too Many Stars type performance, and really exciting release. Matt, I set you up. Take it away, friend.
Well, yeah, I mean, there isn't. You know what? We have a bit of a narrative in this list too, because we started with like a debut sort of an album, debut as a leader, anyways, and then we end with an album that pays tribute to one of jazz's greatest legends. I mean, I think that international on an international level, everybody loves Ella Fitzgerald,
Oh, yeah.
and this was this is really an album that documents his stellar concerts that paid tribute to her in anticipation of her centennial, because it was recorded in 2016 at the Apollo, the place where her talents were discovered. So without the Apollo, maybe she wouldn't have had the platform that then sort of made her eventually into a star. Although you can always argue that a genius like Ella Fitzgerald would have made it anyways, because really she was one of the greats. So yeah, there's not much more that I can say about that. The selection from this album is sort of handpicked from her long recording legacy and repertoire, and it's fascinating to just hear these songs and the way they're interpreted again, and it's always great to celebrate a figure like Ella Fitzgerald.
Yep. And, hosted by Patty Austin, as we mentioned at the top of the program, and David Allen Greer. Performances by Lettucey, Cassandra Wilson, the Count Basie Orchestra led by the great trumpeter Scotty Barnhart. I love the energy of a live performance. And this one, because it had the added element of being a tribute to one of the greatest vocalists in jazz, it just heightened the whole proceeding. So we are actually going to be talking to the producer of this amazing disc, Greg Field. Yes, he was a drummer who performed with Ella Fitzgerald. We're going to be talking to him next Monday in another special edition of the Jazz's Daily Brunch or Cocktail Hour or whatever we call this thing. So be on the lookout for that. So podcast version, we're going to end by spinning this track. Film version, video version, we're gonna wrap things up, man.
What other version is there?
There's the smoke signals version, there's the carrier pigeon version, shadow puppet version. Yeah, we really are diversifying the media in these crazy times. Hey, Matt, it was a sad note yesterday when we caught word of the passing of Henry Grimes and Giuseppe Logan, two kind of stalwarts of the avant-garde, Henry Grimes on bass and Giuseppe Logan on saxophone. Interesting in that their stories were somewhat connected. They were major figures in the 50s and 60s avant-garde, then disappeared for several decades, and both kind of made triumphant returns in the 90s and 2000s. So sad that they passed away really within days of each other of complications related to COVID-19, and our thoughts obviously go out to their families. Our thoughts also go out to healthcare providers around the world, first responders, essential workers, grocery store workers, truck drivers, everyone who is out there working to make things a little less crazy for the rest of us. We sincerely appreciate you. And if you're tuning in, we thank you for tuning in. Matt, a starving beatnik artist like yourself might want to take advantage of a program we offer called the Inside Track. You've heard me talk about this before, but especially in these crazy times, independent artists are asking me, how can I get my stuff reviewed? How can I get my album publicized? Who do I send it to? Is anybody opening mail anymore? Well, the answer to that question is our Inside Track program. This is a program that we offer on jazzes.com. Visit our website, click Submit Your Music. You can upload everything about your new album. The name, the personnel. You can send us a link to SoundCloud, Bandcamp, the track listing, the album cover art. It all comes directly to me, to Matt, to other editors at Jazzes, and we consider it for things like Song of the Day. We consider it for things like our weekly playlist or feature.
We lost Brian. Brian is gone. We lost him, but I think that we were talking about Inside Track. But I wanted to say, don't forget to check your temperature. I have a thermometer on my table. And listen, so I'm just gonna I think we're just going to wrap it up, I think, because we have lost Brian. But in the meantime, I would also, because I'm deep down in my heart, I'm a little bit selfish. I am going to say that I will have another video for the Jazz is Essential series, if you want to check that out. That's a regular series of videos where we talk about events, artists, and so on, and music that gave rise to jazz.
Television, thanks for covering for me, Matt.
Brian is Zach.
I don't know what happened. You know, the internet is not cooperating. It's the end of the day. It's tired.
Telling everybody to check their temperatures.
Oh, good. A PSA from Matt McCucci.
Yeah, I do what I can. You know, it is what it is. It was what it was.
What it is, brother. It is what it is. Well, hey, right, everyone, thank you for tuning into the first live edition.
And last.
That's
no, it's the second.
No. Oh, this is the second. That's right. This is the second. Thank you for joining us again. We sincerely appreciate it. We will be back, of course, next month to go through the 10 albums you need to know for May 2020. If you have any suggestions, feel free to drop us a line on Facebook. We're always listening. Our ears are open. So we sincerely appreciate it. Tomorrow, we have a great show coming up back on the brunch. We have vocalist Flora Purim and her husband, percussionist Erto Morero. You know, we talked about fusion at the beginning of the show. These are two fusion legends. So we got a twofer tomorrow. They'll be on the show. The Jazz Is Brunch show in the morning at 11 a.m. Eastern. Following that, we have episodes with Mark Egan on Wednesday, Petros Klempanis, a young up-and-coming bass player, on Thursday, and then we're going to wrap things up with multi-instrumentalist, saxophonist, former Bela Fleck member, great goatee-having musician, Jeff Coffin. So hopefully you tune into that.
That's amazing. What an amazing lineup. How are you doing this? How are you able to just do interviews every day like that? You're really going all out.
Well, the musicians are home, you know, and they're eager to talk and share their music. And, you know, I'm happy to sit here. I don't even have to wear pants if I have to. So
that's a great thing about
life.
Period, right?
But I do. Rest assured, I do.
Okay.
Anyway, Matt, thank you again for joining me. Thank you for wearing that turtleneck, sir.
Yeah.
And we will see you next month with another glass of whiskey for the 10 albums you need to know for May 2020. So long, folks. Have a great evening. We'll see you tomorrow.
Stay healthy, stay safe, stay strong.
That's right. Bye, everyone.